Run It Studios is the home of the Run Radio podcast and runradio.net, a podcast and station about the relentless, resilient, and innovative types, inspiring strides in life, business, and beyond. Welcome back to the Run Radio podcast. I'm Shanna Wilcox, and my guests today are Robert Indries. We're going to talk a little bit about your book and some of the ways you've been resilient, which is one of the things we really like to cover in the Run Radio podcast, all things relentlessly resilient and innovators. And we always encourage inspiring strides in life, business, and beyond. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your journey into what you do today.
Well, when I was younger, I didn't think of entrepreneurship at all or anything of what I'm doing, almost anything. When I was younger, I wanted to be an engineer. And since I was 10 years old, I always wanted to do engineering and to build stuff, and create things. And so I started my career as an engineer, and then I worked as an engineer for around, I would say, 10 years. And during that time, I realized that the vast majority of companies, at least at the time that I was working for, or that I had the opportunity to work for, didn't really care about myself or anyone in the company for that matter, right? Like they just had some numbers that they wanted to hit, right? And it didn't really matter to them whether it's Robert or Trina or anyone else in the seat, it was the same for them. And I really felt that was the wrong way to do business. I just felt off, like everything about that felt off for me. The final, let's say, drop was when at one point I joined a new company and I really enjoyed it. It was in the middle of Siberia, right, in Novosibirsk. And I went there, I traveled there to work for them. And I worked the first month I got there, I doubled my quota. They were very happy. In month 2, I tripled my quota. In month 3, I tripled my quota again. And at the end of month 3, and I realized that I was so much better than anyone on my, in my position. And, I was helping HR and I was helping product and I was like all over the place. And so I said, okay, I really like it. I really want to do more, and so we were in cubicles because it was a big company. And my manager was right behind me. And so I turned around and I look at her, and the question I asked was, what would happen if I would ask for a raise, right? And so in my mind, I know now that's a very bad way of asking it. But in my mind, the answer to that question was something like, well, we would have to talk to HR and then we would have to do this. And it's like explaining the process of what would happen, if I would ask for a raise. And I remember in a very typical Russian way, she just looked at me and she's like, oh, we would just find someone else.
Oh.
And that was so shocking to me at the time. And I was looking at her and I literally got the blue screen, like the computers used to have blue screens. I didn't have enough RAM to process what she just said. And so I was looking at her and like, okay. And she was like, anything else? Like, no. And then she went back to work. And I just stayed shocked for like a few seconds and I turned back to my screen. And then I decided, like, seriously, in that moment, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to start my own company and then see what happens. And so that's how I started entrepreneurship, out of an inability of myself of finding companies that actually care about the people that, work in those companies. And so that's how I started. And my first company was an engineering firm. We've been, very successful until now. We've successfully completed over 200 projects, innovative projects in 19 different sectors all over the world. It's very, very cool. From autonomous flying drones to dermatology sensors to anything you can think of, we've built. And so I'm very happy with that. And at the same time, at one point, I realized that I could use everything I know in engineering to build better companies, right? To literally improve the systems of every single or every single area in my company, and then I can replicate that multiple companies. So then I started having more and more companies until now. we've had 11 companies in our portfolio. We've already sold 3 of them for a little under $20 million total exit value, and we still have 8 in our portfolio. And so that's a little bit about how, I got here.
What are you doing differently to make people feel more valued in your companies?
Well, something that we believe highly in is that, and we explain this in the book, we hire people for outcomes, not for tasks. So when we have a hiring interview, let's say someone wants to work for us and they want to, be a marketing person, whatever. Or we have a very specific way that's described in the book in like a long period, but in like a long chapter. But basically, we set expectations very clearly on why this role exists and what success and failure look like. So, for example, if it's a marketing role, marketing roles are typically defined by the number of MQLs that they bring, marketing qualified leads. So how many MQLs are you generating every month based on whatever it is that you're doing? I don't care if you post on Facebook. I don't care if you post on Twitter. I don't care if you do it on LinkedIn. I don't care if you post or if you message or if you engage or if you do it once a day or 10 times a day or 100 times a day. I don't care what you do as long as you hit the outcome. The only thing I care about is you hitting the outcome, right? That shows competence. Anyone can say that, I'm a good marketing person. Okay, can you generate leads or not? Anyone can say I'm a good salesperson. Can you close deals or not? It's very easy, right? And it's the same with every other role. These two are just very easy to, understand. But if you're an engineer, are you able to deliver features, like software engineer, for example? Are you able to deliver features without adding more bugs to the system? That's it. That's how you measure, and how fast you can, obviously, because if it takes you 40 hours and if it takes a peer of yours 20 hours and you have the same hourly rate, that means that I'm literally getting the same thing for twice as cheap and twice as fast from someone else. So we have an issue. You might not be as good as you think you are. Maybe you're mid-level instead of senior or whatever. So all of these things can be measured. And so we hire people based on outcomes. And so the moment we set all of these expectations, after that, I genuinely don't care whether you work in the morning or in the evening, or whether you want to take, half of your day off, whether you want a vacation, whether it doesn't matter for us anymore. We literally treat you like a mature adult. You know what you need to do. If you want to go running in the morning for 2 hours, you can do that. If you want to, go out with your spouse every single evening, or whatever you want to do, we don't care. If you don't want to work Wednesdays and decide to work on Saturday instead, or you only want to work 4 days a week or whatever, but you still can get the results, I don't care. So we basically treat you like a normal human being, say, hey, this is what we need from you. Can you do it? Say yes. Okay, these are the rules of the game. Do you agree with the rules, right? For example, one of our rules is we don't swear, right? Another rule is that everything we do with ethics, right? And so on and so forth. So we have a lot in the form of how do we play this game here, and we talk about that a lot in the book as well. As an entrepreneur or as a manager, even if you're a manager within a company, it is your responsibility to define the rules of the game. So here's the outcome we need. Here are the rules of the game. Do we have an agreement on all of the above? And if we do, typically they're a good culture fit. You hire them, and typically they will do well, right? And so that's basically it. If they want, if they are not feeling good on a Friday and they want the Friday off, last second, they're like, hey, I really am not feeling it today. Can I take off? Sure, no problem. Like we have unlimited vacation days as a policy. We have things like educational budgets, right? If people want to invest in themselves, they can say, hey, I'm a web developer and I want to learn mobile development. Okay, well, here's a course on mobile development that you can take. We'll try to find projects in mobile dev where we can give you, where you can help the seniors, because we can't take the responsibility for junior level work if we're selling at senior level rates, right? So we put seniors on. However, we let juniors shadow seniors, and help them, add a button here, change the color of this or whatever, do just small things, but be involved in the project, and then basically grow in that side of their career, and so on and so forth. So there are dozens of things we do, but those are a few examples.
Do you see that the turnover is low because of that?
So we've noticed that in our companies, natural selection is very prominent. So in our companies, people that are used to, let's say, be hidden in the trenches of a corporation do not like it. Because with us, everything's based on outcomes, right? So if you cannot generate the results that you need to generate in your area, right, then by default, frustration will occur, right? We will be frustrated that you can't do what you said you're going to do, and you'll be frustrated because you keep having to either work more or, to explain, you like to come up with excuses. Every week you need to come up with more and more excuses on why you can't do whatever you said you were going to do, and so on and so forth. So it's so only entrepreneurial spirits succeed with us. Like only those people that can have a plan that's perfect, right? Like it's a perfect plan, and then execute on the plan, and 2 weeks in realize that the plan is not working, and then pivot right then and there, right? And then figure out what they actually need to do to succeed. Only those type of people succeed with us, right? And so I do not feel that tenure with us is higher, because in other companies where you can, slack off like 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, or however much, you can slack off because you're hidden within the ranks of mediocrity, then you can stay there for years, right? And I have a lot of friends, I'm not giving names, but I have a lot of friends that I know are earning very good salaries, and I know they're working half of the time that they're being paid to work because they can get away with it. So they have no intention in exiting the company. They can be, hired for a decade, but they know that they're only working 20 hours a week and being paid full time. They could not be able to do that with us, because we would make sure that they deliver on the outcomes that they said they are going to deliver. Again, if they take 20 hours to do that, all fine and well by us, but we find that typically we tend to be very progressive, right? So if you're in a job before and you're making, whatever, 20 calls a day, and like, okay, how much does the average call last? Well, some of them can last for an hour. Okay, fine, no problem. We will measure, no problem. Let's not assume anything. We will measure, because we can, with voice over IP and so on and so forth. We'll measure exactly how many calls you make, exactly when you make them, and exactly how much each call lasts. Lo and behold, you're doing all of your work in 2 hours. So what's with the other 6 hours? What are you doing, right? I'm not going to pay you for 6 hours if you finish your entire work in 2, because you're not getting the results that we want. If they are, let's say we agree on outcomes. Let's say you're a meeting booking person, like you make cold calls, and we want from you, whatever, 5 qualified leads per day, right? If you make 5 calls and get 5 leads, you can stop, no problem. That's it. You've made 5 calls, you're finished in half an hour, you can take the rest of the day off, right? So again, as long as you hit your outcomes, we don't care how much you work. However, if at the weekly meeting you say, I generated 10 book meetings instead of the 25 that I should generate, then we take a look at the numbers, and then we analyze, okay, let's look at your performance. Let's see what you've been doing and for how long. And then we realize you've only worked for 20 hours last week, right? And so like, well, no, because in the meanwhile, I was having meetings, I was doing this, I was doing that. And we say, no. You're not paid to hop on meetings. You're not paid to send emails. You're not paid to do any of that. You're only paid to generate quality leads. That's it. That's the only thing you're paid for. As long as you hit that, then you can do other things if you want to do other things. Otherwise, you cannot. If someone needs your help today, but you didn't get your 5 leads today yet, you need to tell them, I can't help you right now. I'm doing my thing. And when I'm done with my thing, then I can help you. And so these are the level of conversations we're having on a week by week basis with everyone on the team. So again, this can be very frustrating for someone that's used to slacking, right? If they're used to, just calling it a day at, whatever, 1 p.m. because they feel like it. If they didn't hit their MEOs, we call them MEOs, most important outcomes, they can't slack anymore, right?
So, but aren't meetings and emails part of hitting your goals though? You've got to set up those relationships to meet those goals.
So in some cases, yes, I'm giving an exaggerated example,
Okay.
maybe, right? Because if we look at that person and they worked for 20 hours, I did not approve 20 hours of meetings and emails for you to send, right? Maybe you can have one meeting a day or a few emails a day, whatever, that take up maybe 1 to 2 hours of your time. That means a total of, let's say, 5 to 10 hours. But you should have an extra 15 hours of calls that you made last week, which are nowhere to be found, right? So again, maybe I gave an exaggerated example, but it's to prove to the audience that if you measure everything in business, and we talk about that in the book as well, how you should measure everything, everything should be transparent. There should be no guesswork in business. If you're guessing what anyone on your team was doing last Wednesday at 2 p.m., then you don't have the correct metrics in place. You should know what Frank was doing last week at 2 p.m. Even if last week at 2 p.m. he was off because he took off between 12 and 4. That you should be aware of that. Like you should have systems to tell you that he was off for 4 hours last Wednesday between 12 to 4, right? And he worked until 12 and after 4.
Well, let's talk about the book, Unshackled, the 7 levels of business excellence. When did you get the idea for the book? How did you start approaching the writing process for it? Everything like that.
So on our end, I wanted to write a book on business for many, many years. I just felt that I can't be just another millionaire. So I was born in a poor family. We would literally, but I didn't have clothes, like new clothes, until I was 14. Until I was 14, I only wore hand-me-downs and secondhand clothing, from those piles of clothes where you can get clothes for like $1 a pound or whatever. So, and so that was my upbringing. And then by the time I was 25, I managed to become a millionaire. And then by the time I was 31, I passed $10 million, right? So I didn't just want to become a millionaire and write another book, because that's done. It's been over and over again. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get a sense of self-sustainability. I wanted to feel that I need to do nothing in my businesses and they still succeed, they still grow, they still do everything that they need to do without my involvement at all. And so that's what I was trying to build. And I kept trying and trying and trying, and I kept hitting certain roadblocks. So I wanted something that was self-sustainable, that was literally just going to work whether I'm there or not, is going to grow, it's going to get leads, clients, deliver for those clients, good products, good services, etc. I wanted something to just work. So everything was working already in my companies, and we had amazing systems in place, and we talk about all of them in the book and so on and so forth. However, some things were missing. I still had some challenges in certain areas, and I didn't understand why I'm having those challenges. And no matter who I spoke to, I didn't get conclusive answers. And then out of a stroke of luck, I finally met my co-author, Aaron. I met him at a conference. He was a main stage speaker. And I really liked him. Like I really resonated and vibed with, who he was on stage. And then I started speaking to him off stage. Really liked him. I asked him the most difficult questions I had. He had answers to all of them. I then proceeded to buy his, 4-figure course. Like it was quite expensive. It's still expensive to the extent that most courses nowadays are like, $500 or whatever, He keeps his entry level high so that only people that are actually determined, and have the resilience that we were talking about earlier to succeed go into that. So I went into it, and I really enjoyed it. I learned. I took a lot from it. I asked 100 stupid questions. Aaron, I think at one point said that, Robert, I never had anyone ask so many questions as you. I'm like, well, because I'm actually implementing everything. Like from 1 week to the next, I'm implementing every single thing you're saying, and I'm coming up with all of the questions to all of the bottlenecks that I faced during this time. And so it was an amazing 3 months. And then I came again for the course, and again, I took the course like 3-4 times. And I was taking it up a notch every time, because that is just who I am. I love innovation. I love progressing things. And so I would take a concept from him and say, okay, how can I make this work in the remote world, right? Where you don't have an office, you don't have, 8 to 5, blah, 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 right? Or 9 to 5. You have everything else that defines the modern day environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and it just worked wonders. So at one point I told Aaron, and like, Aaron, we really, like, almost no one will be able to afford, statistically speaking, 96% of businesses are below $1 million and way below $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the vast majority of people will not be able to afford, or will not be willing to pay us, 10 grand for a course. It's too much. It's too expensive for them. Why don't we write a book? For all of the businesses that can't afford our course, let's write a book with everything we know, make it the best book of business of all time, give it to people, right? I mean, sell it, obviously, sell it to people. And then for $20, they can tap into our brain, literally on 300 pages of pure gold, and then implement all of those things, or as many of them as they can, to then become a multiple 6-figure or 7-figure business, or maybe 8 figures, or whatever they can do, because all of the concepts are there. So you can go up to $100 million with, all of those concepts, and even half of them, even after that, you can still use. So let's teach that, and then they can buy our course, they can get one-to-one coaching, or they can do whatever, or do business with us, because we're available for partnerships or things of that nature. And so he relented finally and agreed, because I pitched him for like half a year or a year, and he kept saying, no, I'm busy, whatever. And then at one point, he finally gave in and said, okay, fine, let's do it. And like, okay, perfect, that's all I needed. And then we started writing it. It took, I felt, an excruciating 6 months to write. It was so long. Like every morning, every evening, every weekend, I was just writing. And I felt it took forever to write, but we wanted to do good. Literally, even when we sent it to the editors gave us a quote, and we thought it's expensive, but regardless, they were good editors, very well praised, and we gave it to them. And they came back to us and they said, guys, this book is so well written, we're actually going to bill you half of what we normally bill, because it's just like we have so much less work to do.
Wow.
Like the titles are great, the order is great, the grammar is great. Like they had so few edits that they made. We literally just, went on in like 2 weeks or whatever. It was very cool. And then I looked into it, and I found out that most of the bestsellers that are bestsellers take 1.5 years to write, right? So it's 18 months, and we did it in 6. So then I was like, okay, fine, it's okay.
Oh my goodness. Just
Yeah.
what everybody should hear is the persistence paid off. You were resilient about it. And what kind of feedback have you gotten?
So far, we are shocked at the level of feedback that we got. We can't believe it. We're humble. So just to give you an idea, the type of people that have praised and endorsed our book, we have presidents of companies like Warner Brothers International, Priceline.com, Uggs Boots, sharks from Shark Tank, right? And the list just goes on and on and on. And I'm like, amazing authors, like Brian Tracy, if you've ever heard of him, and just so cool. Like, we can't believe it. In the podcasting world, you might know Entrepreneur on Fire, right? John Lee Dumas. He gave us, praise, and so on and so forth. Like, crazy. We loved it. Like, the feedback so far, we've had people saying that they read the entire book in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Because it was so good, and they took 70 pages of notes. They read it in 2 days. It took 70 pages of notes of everything that they want to implement in their businesses. So praise has been fantastic. We know it works, and we know it's just true. Like we say, the truth will set you free. We just know this is true. It's tried and tested. I've had over 300 companies that I had the privilege of working with, and we generated over $500 million for them in all of the processes that we do. So we have three ways in which we help businesses. One is in terms of operation, where we go into a company and we operate that business for you or together with you, right? So almost no one does this in our industry. Everyone just gives advice. No. This is what you need to do, and we will implement it for you and prove that it works the exact way we teach it, right? And so we basically do that for people. We help them with marketing. We basically take people from 500,000 to 4 million, from 4 million to 20 million, from 20 million to 50 million. These are three case studies, for example, that I'm remembering off the top of my head. So any scale, anywhere they are, we just grow them like crazy. And then the final way is with innovation, with systems, because we have an engineering company. So apps, anything they need to automatize, AI if they need it, and so on and so forth. So these are the three ways in which we come together. Many people that work with us for a long time end up using all three. So we manage their company, we do the marketing for them, we do the tech for them, like everything we do, and they just are happy because now they make an extra 20 million a year. So for them, it's a good place to be.
Were there things that you found after getting this book out of the way that you think would be beneficial to do in another book?
In terms of the foundational truths, no.
Right.
Everything else is nuances of how you should do things. So we believe at this point in time, and we keep coming back to the same fundamental truths, there's nothing that the book doesn't have. It should answer every single business question you have. And I can almost prove it to anyone. So if they ask, how do you do this? I can say, level 5 or level 3, chapter 2, right? Literally, this is the answer. So for every single thing that people want to know, the answer is in the book. And so, for example, let me give you specifics. Does the book say exactly where you should hire marketing people if you live in Germany? No, but that's nuance. That's not business fundamental.
Right.
Where you hire the best people in your specific country, when we say in the book, don't ask us about that stuff. You should figure that out. And if you're not capable of figuring it out, work with consultants or work with other people that can help you figure that stuff out, or hire an HR person, and so on and so forth. But basically, the principle of what to look for and what should be in a job description and how the onboarding should be and how the trial should be and so on and so forth, all of that is in the book.
Are there examples for people that are, well, I've heard the term solopreneur, someone like me who is doing everything themselves?
100%. So the entire book is written so that business concepts can be implemented in business. What you won't use is things around, for example, hiring, because that won't help you. However, within that process of hiring, a few of those things are still important. For example, defining the organizational chart. Even if you're the only person in a company, let's say you have a podcasting company or a media company, right? Radio, whatever.
Right.
So you can have a CEO, right? That's in charge of sales, making sure new revenue comes in all the time, right? You need to have someone managing finances. You need to have someone managing editing or managing getting new guests or whatever it is. These are different roles. And so all of these roles should be explained or basically defined as separate, even though it's the same person.
Yeah.
And then each one of those roles should have very specific KPIs to define success. Why? Because if you're a solopreneur and let's say you do great at getting new guests, but you fail at editing, or you fail in distribution, or you fail in whatever other area that matters and that for the business matters, sooner or later, just that's going to bite you in the butt, right? Because this is the reality of how the world works, right? If you don't tackle your finances correctly, the IRS will knock at your door one day, right? And you will be surprised at the immensity of fines the IRS is allowed to give businesses, no matter how big or small they are, right? It'll be 6-figure fines for 5-figure businesses. I kid you not, right? So there are things like that that the book still helps you. And so when you define the role of the editor, you say, this is what the editor needs to do, and this is how we define success within the editing role. And so you know, when you put your editing hat on, this is the outcome I need. When you put your episode distribution and promotion hat on, these are the things that matter. And then you measure yourself toward that own standard that you define.
Very good. Thanks so much for sharing. Tell people where they can go to learn more about you and find your book.
The book is, it's very easy to find. It's theunshackledlife.com. And if they search for it, The Unshackled Life or Unshackled 7 Levels of Business Excellence, they will find it. They'll find our website. If they get it on the website, we have like 5 bonuses there that people can get. So including they could potentially get 3 months of one-on-one coaching and consulting from us, right? So that's another thing that's in there in the pot. And if anyone wants to ask me any questions or work with me directly or things of that nature, they could just Google my full name, Robert Indries, and then they can very easily, the first 3 pages should be things about me. However, I have a website with my full name. So if they Google me, they'll find robertindries.com. And then there are multiple forms of whatever it is, however they think I can help. And if they mention Trina or they mention, the podcast name or anything of the sort, so that I know or we know that they came from this podcast, then I have a team of 4 full-time assistants. I promise that they will send that to me, and then I will reply personally to that. Perfect.
Thank you very much for sharing what you've learned and trying to make it easier for other people to have the level of success that you've achieved. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much as well.
Come back anytime. Thank you so much, Robert Indries. You can link over, listen, and find the platform that you want to watch the videos on from runradio.net.